Okay, so we're going to be doing our usual format, which is names, pronouns, and then the icebreaker, which for today will be what specific, what special skills do you have that you think would be useful on a ship like the Merciful? And as always, I'll go first. So my name is Jonathan. Pronouns are he, him. And I work in healthcare, so I can go with the obvious answer and say that I would be like in the medical ward of the ship. But if I'm not going to go with that, I would say that I'm a good cook and I'm also pretty good at rationing out food and meal portions. So I would love to work in the kitchen instead of the medical ward. So yeah, who wants to go next?
I can go next. My name's Melissa. My pronouns are she, her, and I think I would want to have. I'd be happy with like the menial kind of swabbing the deck sort of jobs. I think just give me a job and I'll get on with it. The cleaning and clearing up, I suppose. nothing too um, complicated.
I'll go next. My name is Grace. My pronouns are they, them. And I would want to be the captain so I wouldn't make dumb decisions like this captain did and all captains do in any of these horror films or like horror books. I'd be like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's just throw all of our food over the side because instead of waiting to make sure you get oil and then throwing it over the side, but so I would want to be the captain.
I can go. My name is Michael. I use he, him pronouns. And I would like to be in the galley, be the cook. Just in general, I like doing that. And I think that being on a ship, especially with limited resources, could be like a fun challenge to be resourceful. Like, how are we gonna have whatever stick soup today?
My name's Arian. I go by he, him pronouns, but I'm fine with any. I'd probably be. Okay, I didn't really think about it because, I never imagined myself on a ship. I'd rather. Eh. But I'd be probably the right hand because I feel like I don't have I don't have it in me to be like a captain because I don't have it in me to stomach to go through with my own decisions to execute them. So I'll be like, I'll just add some input and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, I think that leaves you, Jess. Are you able to unmute yourself and answer, or are you still having difficulties with your computer? Oh. Okay, we'll go ahead without her, and then hopefully she can join in later. Okay, so I'll ask, what did everyone think of this month's book, From the Belly by Emmett Nahil?
I can go first. I actually I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Yeah, I said before, I've never read any horror unless you count Goosebumps growing up. I don't know if that counts. So yeah, I was expecting it to be more scary, but the creepiness was really well done. The way that it built up over time, and I was having to take notes, just even thinking, okay, who's who? I'm never going to remember all these names, but I started remembering who everyone was. And I think that's always a good sign that you're getting into a story. So yeah, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Like Melissa, I also enjoyed the book, but I'm also a big fan of horror, so I probably would have enjoyed it either way. I will preface that though by saying that I did not finish. I only made it like a third of the way through, which is very unlike me. But from what I did read, I appreciated it and look forward to hearing what you all think about the parts that I did not finish.
Yeah. I started getting into horror a little bit more. And so this was not my first, but I really loved it. I thought it was just really interesting. I don't really know much about. I had to keep looking up terms for some of the jobs on the ship or what they were doing to kind of get an idea of what was going on. And I was really intrigued by Isaac, and I thought the whole story, and I would love to have another story in this world set, just like with their mythologies and like why like truth sayers or people that can see stuff is like so bad, even though like obviously spooky things happen all the time. So
This is probably like my third or fourth horror book, so I don't think I've read enough to say like, oh yeah, I totally read horror. But I like the genre enough. So I wasn't that surprised when I found myself liking this book. I also kind of had trouble with the names because, yeah, it clicked when the Chase and Isaiah that they were using last names and first names. And I guess that's what they do on a boat, on boats as a crew and stuff. But yeah, it's a really, uh, it was really good. And I especially loved the small little tension that Isaiah and Essex had going on. It was, ooh, yeah.
Nice. I will say that as someone who's like a gigantic horror fan, this is nowhere near my first rodeo when it comes to horror novels or horror media in general. But I really did enjoy this book. I really enjoy a slow burn horror, and I think it works best as a novel. Um, but I have to say that I did find the writing at times very dense. I don't know, something about the author's writing style, or maybe it was just the language being used for the time period that the story is set in. It felt like an interaction took forever. Like every single page felt like 5 pages to me. And while, of course, I did finish the book, it was kind of hard. At times, I was like, "Am I going to finish this before Sunday?" But of course, I did. Um, I was also kind of surprised how much of a subplot the romantic storyline between Isaiah and Essex is. Just based on the book's description, I expected a lot more there. So I was definitely a bit shocked just how little of that we explored in this novel. Um, but I do have to say, on the other hand of that, I am kind of maybe impressed or interested in a novel that doesn't make the main character's queerness their main character trait. Like Isaiah is so much more than just that, to where it almost feels like an afterthought. So that's kind of cool to see. Um, and I believe it was Arian who pointed it out on Discord a little bit ago, or maybe it was you, Grace. I don't remember which one. This book is very creepy. I wouldn't say it's like as scary or like nightmare inducing as like other things that I've read in my life, but I love the creepy feel of it. And I love the fact that the author was able to describe things so well that I was actually able to picture things. And I guess that leads me to I also really enjoyed the pictures included in the book. I know that Emmett previously has worked on a graphic novel. I'm not sure if he is the one who illustrated that or not, but it's clear that he has an interest in like visual things. So that was obviously nice to see. And it obviously added to the tension and overall horror of the story. Um, and without, I guess, skipping ahead too much, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the book's ending. We will, of course, get there, but just generally, I will say the book's ending to me felt very rushed. And I was kind of, as I was getting closer to the book's end in the last like 2 or 3 chapters, I was like, this feels like the middle of the story, not the story's ending. But of course, we'll get there. So I'll leave it there for now. Okay. I guess my first question is, when do you guys think that this story takes place? Or were you even able to, was there a time in the book where the time period was mentioned?
I felt like it was almost like a fantasy 18 mumble 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 is kind of how it felt for me, just like with the kind of guns they were talking about and the type of ship that it was, and that there was no real like motors or anything industrial revolution-y. 18 question mark question mark question mark is kind of how it felt to me.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as Grace. It felt, I don't know that I really like thought too much about it, but it did feel very like pre pre like industrial revolution.
I also, oh gosh, maybe this is, I don't know, very typically English. I felt like throughout it didn't feel very American. Like the writing, I didn't notice any words. It sometimes when I'll watch like a historical drama or read something that's historical, like by an American author, and then there's certain words that make me remind me that it's written by someone from the US. But I didn't get that reading this, and so I was kind of pulled into it thinking, oh, it felt very English. I don't know if that's the right way of phrasing it.
Pretty much, I pretty much agree with everyone. Pre-industrialization, Pirates of the Caribbean. I think Pirates of the Caribbean is my only other exposure to this kind of genre or stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. Again, like you all said, I did definitely imagine it happening during the like time period where pirates were still kind of a thing. I also, in the beginning of the story, wasn't sure if these people on the ship are pirates, but I'm assuming they're not. I guess they're just like whale hunting people. Um, I guess I asked about the time period primarily because I did notice we had a lot of women on the ship. And I was like, I'm just curious, how historically accurate is that? Like, how often were women included in these whale hunting jobs? And then I also noticed a few non-binary characters, which I also found interesting, the author's ability to tie that in to this novel. But I guess, like someone pointed out, I believe it was you, Grace, that it's a fantasy, so you don't really have to worry too much about historical accuracy, but that's cool. Okay, this is usually the time where we discuss each character in general, our thoughts on them, but there are so many, I don't think that's really possible to do. So I guess we'll just discuss Isaiah. General thoughts on Isaiah as a character in this story.
I always appreciate a character with magic powers. So that was kind of cool to like see Isaiah like embracing or like remembering like how to do some of those things towards the beginning of the book, like picking back up, I guess what his father was doing or trying to like show him at times. So I like that part. Outside of that, I don't know. I feel like he can be like a little. I don't even want to say whiny. Just something rubbed me the wrong way a little bit sometimes. But that also may just have to do with my progress in the book.
Yeah, Michael, I kind of felt the same way. I really liked how I felt like he was kind of coming into himself a little bit more. So, like at the beginning of the book, just like having his father like die because of like his gifts, and then probably having to hide all the time. And then if you draw too much attention to yourself, then maybe you'll, just end up dying because people like figure it out. Um, and I thought it was really interesting how he went through with his gifts and he used them more and more as things kept getting worse and worse. Ship. I really liked that atmosphere of him also starting to speak up and sneak around to find stuff and try to speak up in his own way, but then getting a friend killed by accident because there's a weird, creepy monster in the bow of the ship. Like trying to stay quiet to try to show him something. And so I think there's just a lot of like, why does everybody like keep dying? And then almost like with Essex too, just like, why am I so attracted to this person that's probably not a human? And, the constant pull to want to take care. And so it was really interesting how throughout the book he kind of progressed into speaking out a little bit more, but then I feel like we kind of got a glimpse into why he didn't want to, because whenever he finally felt encouraged enough to say that he had a gift, that friend of his like rejected him really hard and was almost like mortified. And so I think that gave me a little bit more like oh, okay, well, that's probably why he doesn't trust anybody or to speak up or say anything really. Because even someone they thought he could trust, and everyone's like dying from a crazy plague thing, still are so like against like who he is. And yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. But I liked him.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked him as well. I thought that it was interesting how he did kind of his power, feeling very powerless, and it was almost like the way it was portrayed, or he portrayed things. It's almost like these things are happening to Isaiah, and he doesn't have any control over everything, over any of it. But then there were things that, like you were saying about how he accidentally got his friend killed, and other things, and just in the way that he interacted with Essex. He did actually have quite a lot of power, and obviously towards the end when he stopped them from, well, we'll have to get to the end, but yeah, it just felt like I quite liked how he sort of came into his own a little bit more, yeah, a bit more kept coming into his power.
Okay, real. I really liked him as a character as well. I like his characterizations. Um, his sewing thing. I like how they like kind of, it makes sense, especially with this character. It kind of ties in with his character and all that he knows how to sew. Because to me, he was like kind of like a bleeding heart, like a very concerned character, very thoughtful one. I really liked. It was kind of funny how they made how they made it running that he can't lie. So that kind of made it for some moments during the book where it was kind of fun for me, or it was kind of amusing to read. The scrying thing was pretty cool. I really liked how they included that because it added a lot of depth for him. I I I don't know about his father because this is about Isaiah, but let me just say it. I thought they would go deeper with his father, but I'm kind of okay that they didn't. He seemed like Isaiah seemed very young. I don't know if they mentioned it in the book, but he seemed like one of the youngest, or like the youngest member of the crew. Um, he was like a wee lamb. We, I love saying that from Brave. It stuck with me. But yeah, he was like a wee lamb, and then he was just growing throughout the story. I agree with everyone else. Um, his decisions just felt more solid, and he like had more confidence in himself. Um, I thought that there was a price to be paid every time he scried because he was so hesitant to do it. But no, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but no, he was just scared. And then the final time he did it, he was just so confident, and maybe not confident, maybe desperate. But I liked how he was, I guess, trusting in himself more and in the power more and in his own decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, like some of you guys, I definitely did find Isaiah a bit difficult to really enjoy at times. I would agree that yes, I think he does go through a little bit of growth throughout the story. I don't think it's a drastic change, or at least not as much as I would have liked to see him go through. Um, I would have really liked a bit more, maybe the term is like headstrong, or just a bit more able to like stick up to people on the ship. It almost seemed as if he was like, I don't know, he was just like this little servant that like did whatever anyone said. And I would have liked him to kind of break out of that some. I also would have liked to get a bit more, like Arian said, a bit more of his backstory with his father and especially his mother. I feel as if the mother especially is mentioned like once or twice. And I would have definitely liked to see what Isaiah's childhood was like growing up and like how he realized he had powers and all of that. Um, I also would have been a bit more interested to see, or I guess to read about his thoughts on his feelings for Essex, since it is, of course, a queer story. I was curious, was Isaiah always queer? Is Essex his first like queer love or like any of that? And we got none of that, which I thought was kind of a missed opportunity, but I would have also liked to like read from this author's perspective what was the general consensus around queerness in this time period. Was it like an accepted thing? Was it like a shameful thing? Was it okay if you're in the sea? Whatever, but it's okay, I guess. Isaiah was okay. Okay, next, I'm curious, do you think that Essex purposefully had the merciful crew members rescue him from the whale, or was that all just happenstance?
I love this question because I've actually thought about this question. I was like, why is he there? I feel like Essex is a punishment for whaling and that you're just unlucky when you pull him up from the sea, since he's talked about that about how he just is, and he's been dissected a lot and then thrown back and then just in a whale, and it's been like over and over and over again. So I feel like it was just like bad luck punishment for a whaling ship that ends up pulling him up over and over and over again. And since he was a little, like, I don't know what kind of monster I guess he would be, Essex. But I thought it was interesting that the main character, Zaya, was, queer in some way, but also like, it's like a monster love story at the same time, I guess, or like a monster inquiry. So yeah, almost like a punishment. But the reason why Essex, I guess, I feel like left Isaiah alone was because he seemed like he was the only one on the ship that actually cared about people and wasn't just trying to get ahead or like selfishness. So I thought that might have had something to do with why Essex came aboard.
Yeah, I definitely did not think it was a coincidence for him to show up. And I did think about this a little bit, but I really like Grace's theory that this is part of like some like unlucky punishment you get for whaling or like taking more than was appropriate or sustainable.
Yeah, I agree with both Michael and Grace. I think it was just a punishment as well, but I don't think like he specifically chose that ship. I think they just got unlucky, and they found him. But if it was any other ship, the same thing would have happened.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said. Yeah, so I don't have much more to add to that. Yeah, I don't think Essex purposely, was found on purpose. It was, yeah, I agree.
I think that initially I believed that Essex was found on purpose, but as you all are saying, it's like a punishment for pretty much anyone who's in the whaling business. I think that explanation makes a lot more sense. Because it does seem as if he's gone through several different ships. I remember Isaiah saying that after he was pulled out of the whale, they were able to find other pieces of another ship, which showed that he had previously come from somewhere else. So I guess that makes me question exactly like how many of these has he done it to, and like, and as I was reading that, I began to like think, okay, why is no one like inquiring why so many people on these ships are like not coming back? And I'm assuming are all being presumed to be dead. But I guess I remember that, okay, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have texting, calling. So obviously, like, there's only so much you really can do in this time period. But okay. Now I'll ask, why do you all think that the merciful crew members are being punished?
I'm trying to remember. At first, I thought it was purely for the whaling, but then Essex did say a couple of times, he did talk about, I think Michael said, it was more about taking more than you need, and I guess capitalism, I suppose. It felt like it was a punishment for greed, money.
Yeah, I felt like the punishment might not have been so bad if they didn't dump the fish overboard, since it was kind of like a blessing. It was almost like those fish that came down was like a test. And because instead of getting the blessing of like nourishment, they threw it overboard for more whale oil, which I think just sealed the deal, almost like sealed the deal, almost like choosing wrong, because it just makes me wonder, because Essex was so nice to Isaiah the whole time. And Isaiah was actually like a genuinely good person that wanted to help others. So like wanted to clothe Essex, wanted to feed him, and then, kiss him later. But, like, so in general, nice. And so, like all the members of the crew were pretty selfish, in as much where as long as they could get ahead to get out of their debts. And I've been listening to a podcast about the Dutch trading company and like how brutal and awful they were during like the Gilded Age, and you would have to go into debt in order to work for them and then try to get out of debt. And so, also in this book, they mentioned how like if they needed more food, they'd go into debt. So if they didn't catch enough like oil when they got back, they would be in debt. And like and their families would get the debt. So if anyone died, their families would have to try to pay off the debt. And so instead of like in this book, instead of taking care of each other, they just kept failing all these tests. And then at the end, we also got like the evil doctor also, that all of a sudden she just was like wanted this to be able to study it, to be able to use it on other people. And so it's like everyone was failing the ethics test on this whaling ship, besides like one person, who ended up being okay almost at the end. So I thought that was kind of what happened. But the raining of fish and the fish in the barrel really, I thought that was more like a, not like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but like an omen for sure.
Okay, I think there's like this part at the end of the book, like this very cryptic like saying, something about, oh, the islanders or the people on town forget about the blood it takes to something something. So yeah, I do think part of it is just like the capitalism and greed, morals aspect of it, but also maybe just like the sea gods just, you know, fucking around, and making people fear them, respect them, I guess. I do agree with the fish point. Like, I think that was the second time Grace has brought it up, and it it got me so irritated as well. I'm surprised they didn't start a mutiny, at that point. Like at that point of the book, like the captain was clearly crazy, gone bad. Anyway, leaving that for a different part, but yeah, I think uh, Melissa, um, capital morals of greed and grace. I agree with both of y'all.
At first, I was unsure, but I do think you all have convinced me that it is because of greed. I think going into it, I assumed we were going to get some sort of like, just based on the book's description, some sort of like seven deadly sins sort of punishments. So I was assuming we're going to get like each character who dies has committed some like awful wrongdoing, and then Essex is to dole out their punishment. But yeah, I guess the punishment is for greed. And I liked, Grace, how you mentioned the point about the fish, and like that was like a choice to have the punishment stop there. I hadn't considered that, but that does make a lot of sense. It's like they were so concerned with the capitalism, like Melissa and Arian said, and the whales of it all, that they were unable to appreciate the blessing that the fish washing up on board, literally for them to eat, uh, or they weren't able to appreciate that. Um, and I think now that I think about it and like choices and like, the things that happen are because of your choices, I'm reminded a lot of like Nosferatu and like how that story plays out, especially the portion of the story where they're on the ship. That is very similar. So yeah, I guess it's because they're capitalism, which is unfortunate, but okay. Now I guess I'll ask, do you agree that the crew members deserve to be punished? Or do you think they don't deserve it?
I think this is kind of a tricky question because I have a feeling that a lot of the crew members are there like out of necessity. And it does feel a lot like not quite slavery, but it's very much like definition of indentured servitude. Like you owe us a debt and do some work, and then maybe if you pay off the debt, then you can stop working. So it does feel like a trap for a lot of them, but at the same time, like a lot of them are obviously like taking advantage or there to like try and like get ahead a little bit more quickly, and they're letting that get in the way of just like doing the work to like sustain themselves.
I think it's really interesting because on the one hand, yeah, throughout as things got worse and as I can't remember the name of Isaiah's friend who had the bumps under their arm. Was it oh gosh, I can't remember. But it just felt as though, okay, now whoever they is, they're going for, our friend, the one that we really, well, the one that I started really caring about. And it just, yeah, Hendrix, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, actually, and Calder. So yeah, the two of them who felt very close to Isaiah, and it just felt like on the one hand there is that the sort of indentured servitude thing, yeah, and the debt, but on the other hand, I guess that's maybe the point, that whether or not they're nice people or good people or they're just trying to get home, I think the point that Essex, I suppose, is saying, this has been set on this course, there's no going back, there's nothing that can be done about it. It's just, yeah, this is just now fate. It's fated to go back to the depths.
Yeah, I like what Melissa was saying. And I feel like, just like with capitalism, as we've kind of talked about before, but it's like, we've heard people say, like there's no ethical consumption under capitalism because you're something that you buy is inevitably harming somebody else. And so it's almost like on this ship, the way that the society has, like, there was no collective action on that ship. They could have collectively acted, right, in this individual mindset. And so, did they deserve it? I mean, I don't know. I think some on the ship definitely did. And I think some on the ship were more complacent, right? And so, we kind of fall back on Isaiah, but he took part of his food to feed Essex, even though he didn't need food. And everybody else on the ship kind of told him, well, that was a dumb thing to do. So a lot of people like weren't sharing, right? They weren't collective bargaining or action or like making sure everyone was taken care of. It was like, well, I have debts and, things like that is what it kind of felt like. So I think, just like Melissa said, when Essex was like, this course has already been set. Essentially, everyone's actions up until this point have set them on this course for failure. And when I was reading this book, it kind of reminded me of like climate change and how it's like we don't deserve maybe like all the poorest of us are going to be the most affected first, but at the same time we still all do consume certain things because of how society is set up, and so it takes like a very specific mindset to try to divest from some of those things. And then it's like the course has been set, right? But like the whaling company, they're the real villains of this story, and will they feel the punishment of this whaling ship? Probably not, because they'll have so many other whaling ships out there as well. So that's kind of what it reminded me of, is just like large corporations, indentured servitude, people not collectively rising up together, kind of being selfish. And then what happens whenever people don't help one another. And the one person in the story that did share food and resources and tried to help was inevitably unharmed, which I thought was really interesting in the story. So I think some deserved it more than others, but everyone collectively went in on it, I guess you could say, as the story was going on, because they had whole lives that led up to them being on that ship, which I think is interesting.
There were like a lot of characters in the book, and I don't think that the characters that did have a lot of on-screen time for their death or for dying, they weren't really fleshed out. Like, I can't recall like a solid thing about Calder or a solid thing about Hendrix other than her whittling and her having like, I don't know, very kind of stern but like also very friendly-ish vibe for towards Isaiah. I don't know. I feel like I'm just assuming like that they're all some kind of like Suicide Squad kind of thing. Not that they're like, yeah, I'm just using Suicide Squad as an example, but maybe they're all evil or criminals and they all had to deal with something like death, basically the indentured servitude. And they're just like chummy enough with each other. I don't know, like whatever evil shit they did in the past, if they did even do evil shit, none of that matters. So they're just like interacting with each other normally, if that makes sense. So I don't know if they deserved it. Like, come on, barnacles, like eating away at your flesh, your bone, the rowing up an entire eel, coral growing under your skin, and like, I don't know, getting drowned by like a tentacle or like seaweed monster kind of thing. That seems kind of brutal because none of them seemed like, outright evil aside from the captain and aside from Lice, I think, or was it Sharp? Or yeah, and the Doctor Montero. Like none of them seemed that evil to deserve all of that. Uh, but yeah, I do think that the greed did play a part because at the end they were like, I think Isaiah was like, they had an option. Essex is making them choose. They could either go to the shore or, go kill the whale and the oil. But I think Essex was kind of lying about that. part. But yeah, I don't think they deserved it that bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question to decide whether or not someone deserves like punishment to this extent. I would say, like Arian said, every single character that was punished didn't feel fleshed out enough for me to really think they deserved it. I will say that I do think Bellamy and Coffin, the initial captain, I think they were both bad enough people to where I'm like, when they died, I don't really care. It's okay with me. But I'm reminded of Fallon, which is the character that is killed in the storage room. He actually seemed pretty nice, which is why I found his death kind of confusing. He didn't seem like he did much wrong. He actually also seemed very friendly to Isaiah. I think Isaiah mentioned like he was like a very, very close friend of his. So I began to question why Essex would have killed him or had him killed or however that worked out. Um, but yeah, but like Grace said, I like what you brought up, capitalism and global warming. And I think you're right. There really is no one is truly innocent in that. We're all committing little acts of capitalism, or we're all contributing to global warming in some way. Obviously, some more than others, but in some way, we all kind of are. So, if I was to say that these characters deserve their punishment, then I guess I have to also agree that Isaiah, as nice as he is, does deserve some level of punishment as well because he is also on the whaling ship, and he's probably also helped kill God knows how many whales. So I don't know. It's tricky. I don't know. I think Essex let Isaiah off easily because he has a crush on him, which I don't think is totally fair, but that's fine, I guess. Now, I know, Grace, earlier you mentioned, oh, you have a hand raised? What's up, Grace?
I just thought about Fallon's, like when you mentioned Fallon's death and when Isaiah talked to Essex, do you think Essex was, and that's why Fallon died? Because I just thought about that because he was like, "Oh, I didn't know you'd be so upset." Um, and I kind of like what you said, like if Essex is kind of letting Isaiah off because he has a crush on him or likes him, I was like, I wonder if it was maybe like a jealousy thing, kind of. I don't know.
Yeah, it seemed that way to me. I remember when Isaiah told Essex how close he was to Fallon, Essex looked disappointed or like hurt. So I do think there was some level of jealousy there. I'm not sure if that was why Essex had Fallon killed, but I do think that was at least a tiny part of it. So yeah, good that you pointed that out. Now I know, Grace, earlier you mentioned not really knowing what kind of creature or like monster Essex is. I think he is a siren, which is, I guess, like the evil version of a mermaid, just based on how he's described and what his powers seem to be. And I'm curious, do you all think that as well, or do you think that Essex is something else entirely?
I hadn't actually even considered what it was. Almost like part of my mind had to block out. I was constantly wondering, is this Essex, or is it just that he's this vessel? I just didn't really understand any of that, so I kind of blocked it from my mind. So I hadn't actually even gotten as far as wondering what Essex or who he was. But siren seems to fit. Having just Googled what is a siren, siren fits.
Um, I hadn't really thought about it, but I do like the siren idea, um, especially because, at least in my experience, I feel like they're always women. So it's kind of cool to like think of Essex being like in that role and like filling some sort of like queer narrative that way. Um, but I was kind of thinking that there is a, you know, there's like tree spirits like dryads and naiads and all that stuff. If there's like an ocean version, maybe something like that. But I don't know, maybe Siren fits that, and that's what that is.
Yeah, I kind of agree with like Michael that maybe it's just more like a whale spirit of some sort. Um, because I remember the author though did mention like Moby Dick, right? And I forgot that I had looked up. There's a book called The Shipwreck of the Whale Ship Essex, and it's the true narrative that inspired Herman Melville's Moby Dick. And so that book is actually about a whaling ship, the shipwreck of the whale ship Essex, and then it says it's the harrowing of the unfortunate vessel's calamitous encounter with a great white whale and the crew's perilous fights for survival on the open sea. So I'm wondering if maybe Essex could also be like a ship spirit, also maybe, or I don't know. But I thought that was interesting, and I didn't even think about that. And then I looked at my notes, and I was like, oh yeah, because I thought Essex was a really interesting name.
Um, I didn't really think of him as a siren, but I guess that would make sense with like the voice part when he was threatening Coffin and stuff. I I agree with Grace. I thought it was like some type of whale or some type of whale spirit or like avatar vessel kind of thing. Very vague, um, but not exactly a whale, I guess. Because in the shipwreck, there were like a carving of like or like drawings of whales and stuff with tally marks, and I thought that I don't know. I thought that was like either how many times he revived as a whale and like killed like a ship or something, or how many whales that a certain ship has killed. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I, I mean he just seemed so whaley to me.
Yeah, I think, like Arian said, I initially assumed Siren because I remember when Essex first meets Isaiah, and then Essex asks if Isaiah is willing to get the key to set him out, to set him free. Isaiah says, even though he knows obviously it's impossible and wrong, and perhaps dangerous, he feels this instinctive pull to do whatever Essex says. And that to me reminds me of like what a siren would do. They're oftentimes with their siren song and their voice able to get you to do dangerous, harmful things. Um, but then towards the end, when the like final battle on the ship, we won't get there yet, but to speak about it briefly, when that's happening, as Isaiah says that Essex's voice sounds like all the gods mixed together, which reminds me of another part of the book where Essex says the people on the ship deserve to be punished because they call out to gods, and the gods laugh because they don't know who they're really speaking to. So I'm wondering now, is Essex some kind of like sea god, like perhaps a Poseidon type of figure? Because he also is able to seemingly control ocean life. He's able to conjure whales out of thin air. He's able to make fish jump onto uh, jump onto the ship. And it seems as if he has some sort of like voice control with Coffin and with Isaiah. Um, which I guess brings up another question of mine. Do you think that Essex made Coffin kill himself, or do you think that was all Coffin's doing?
I feel like it's a lot of both. I feel like Coffin was already, well, his name told me he was probably gonna die because I was like, that's kind of foreshadowing. And they also mentioned that other, I cannot remember her name, that female captain that I think it was Hendrix was in a relationship with, and that's where like kind of like where the gun came from. Um, and so the idea of like captains kind of going crazy was also kind of in the atmosphere, and his unhinged behavior. Briggs, yes, thank you, Briggs. um and so I feel like Essex didn't help and led him there faster because of their conversations and the way that they spoke to one another. It's almost like, I don't know if each captain knows more than they let on or something, and it eventually just kind of drives them mad. Or if maybe it is like a whale siren baby situation where you're in the sea for that long of time, you're commanding all these people, and then also you kind of see more atrocities over time. So I would say it was a 70-30, 70% probably Essex fault, and then 30% Coffin's already on his way there.
Okay, yeah, I think with Coffin's, um, bouts with alcoholism, um, the book definitely showed that. I think he was on his way, for sure, but I feel like Essex influenced it a bit. I mean, um, I was hoping he would, yeah, yeah. I think Essex pull made things more unfortunate. I mean, Essex did, you know, influence things because I don't think he would have things would have gotten that bad if Essex didn't do all the jazz. Um, I think somewhere along the book, um, along the cave, maybe uh, Isaiah was like, or was it S? I don't know. Wait, yeah, the captain knew everything, or like the captain knew what Isaiah's presence on the boat meant this entire time. And then I guess the captain just figured everything else was doomed or something. I would have liked for them to expound on that more, but I guess like the mystery and the intrigue is also nice.
Yeah, I think like Grace said, I think it was like 70-30 as well. I remember Essex saying to Isaiah once Isaiah tells him that Coffin is dead, and he asks him if he did it. Essex says like, I didn't do it, but it wouldn't have been that hard because Coffin was pretty much mentally unstable already. Um, but I also am thinking there's a big possibility he did do it because I believe he also killed Bellamy to protect Isaiah. These are two people who posed some sort of threat to Isaiah throughout the story. So like he took them out to protect him, and he also killed Hendrix to protect Isaiah as well. So I do think there is a big possibility that he did kill him. And I forgot to mention earlier, but I also think another reason why I think that Essex could be a siren is because Isaiah mentions when Fallon is killed, there is some sort of like slithering, swimming creature in the water. And then the next day when he talks to Essex, Essex appears to be full, almost as if he would have eaten Essex. Sorry, would have eaten Fallon. So, yeah. Now, what did you all think of the relationship or bond that Isaiah and Essex shared throughout this story?
I couldn't. I liked it. There, I think maybe Jonathan had said before, it wasn't really explored as much as I was expecting. But then, I was never really sure whether or not Essex was intrigued by Isaiah because Isaiah's kind of powers, and or whether or not they had they'd connected because Isaiah was the only person that was kind of interested and kind to him. Maybe it was probably a bit of both. But yeah, I found it to be quite an intriguing. Yeah, it was pretty awful actually. I'm thinking about it because Isaiah's just clearly knowing, gradually coming to realize that Essex isn't this innocent person that's been pulled, from the belly, and yet still has this attraction that he can't really control, and doesn't really necessarily want to control because he obviously has a massive crush.
It did. Like Melissa, that you just mentioned that maybe it was like because they're both like magical beings, because that definitely crossed my mind a few times too. And I had that like, are they just drawn to each other because they have some sort of like power that no one else has?
Yeah, I found their relationship to be interesting. I think in the beginning, the relationship between Isaiah and Essex felt very manipulative. I thought that maybe Essex is like doing some sort of compelling spell or something on Isaiah to make Isaiah like him. But I guess as the book moves forward, it does seem as if Isaiah has some level of like attraction to Essex. I remember that when he has the dream of Essex stepping out of the boiling whale oil, he mentions like how much that excites him, the image of like seeing Essex naked for the first time. Um, and I found myself a little bit confused towards the end of the story. I imagined that once Essex was set free, we would kind of really kick off his relationship with Isaiah, but it seems as if things became more chill when he was let out. Calder. Calder? Um, it seems like things became more chill once Isaiah was let out. Sorry, once Essex was let out. Um, he really kind of let Isaiah do his own thing. I know Isaiah at times mentions there are like sometimes weeks in between their interactions with one another, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, what other purpose does Essex have to stay on board if it's not to get closer to Isaiah? But that's fine, I guess. Now, I guess I'm curious, do you think that Isaiah's attraction to Essex was real, or do you think that was all Essex's doing to make him like him?
Yeah, I feel like it was real, not real. So I think Isaiah felt like it was real, but I feel like Essex did have um an aura or like a pull to him that would make him more alluring, especially to someone that's more in tune with the other world, or I can't remember exactly how they described it in the book, but talk about like being a part of that like other world and being able to hear things, or like, you know, being able to see into the future. And yeah, so I feel like it was real, but I feel like there was still a supernatural component to the attraction, because both of them had, one was completely from a different world, and then Isaiah was tapped into that world, and it almost felt like for the first time, Isaiah wouldn't have to hide either his gift without fear of retribution or being killed. And yeah, and then smoochy kiss time. So you're on a ship for a long time, so that's probably nice.
Okay, yeah, I do think Isaiah's attraction towards Essex was real, but like Grace said, I don't know, he had like this pull or aura and like seduced him a bit, I guess. Uh, yeah, they definitely bonded over the whole powers thing and like the whole ocean kind of thing. Um, I really wish they would have added like a scene or two more to like just, you know, flesh it out like a bit more, like have them have like one deep conversation. I don't know if they ever had like a deep conversation or something that wasn't just Isaiah just, hey, did you do this? Was this you? Tell me. And then Essex was like grinning or like showing human emotion actually, and he wasn't just like this creature, but he was also this creature sometimes, this inhuman kind of preternatural thing from the depths. um yeah, I think that the attraction was there and it was real. um yeah, one day, the longing, yeah. hmm when I don't know if they did, if we're gonna discuss this, but I'm just gonna say it now in case we don't. But like, when Essex died, um, when he got killed by Isaiah, and he said, "You've killed me, my love." Wow, yeah, um, mhm. That it gave me life, something fierce. The way the author used something fierce, I always loved that as well. It stirred up something fierce in me. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think, like I said earlier, that Isaiah's attraction to Essex on some level was real. I began to question Essex's attraction to Isaiah. I would have loved to know if Isaiah is the first time Essex has ever met someone on these like punishment doling out journeys that he's had a crush on, or is this like something he does with like, does he pick one person on each ship? Like, does he like try to seek out like the most kind, the least deserving of punishment on each ship? Um, and I think we could have definitely used a bit more of that and like how that all works out. Um, I was also wondering, since Essex knew pretty early on that Isaiah has some level of like magical abilities, was he like keeping him alive to use him later on? Like, what was his whole purpose there with Isaiah? But yeah, I'm not sure if I'm convinced that Essex really had feelings for Isaiah. I'm just not sure. Now, since it comes up later towards the end of the book, I'm curious, did you guys notice any similarities between both Essex and Isaiah suffering cruelty at the hands of human beings.
Yeah, I suppose I hadn't actually thought of that bit. I guess that might be probably brings wait, what am I saying? Probably was part of what made Isaiah so empathetic towards Essex at the beginning. Wanting to see the good in the good in everyone. Yeah, maybe coming from a place of hurt and that experience of, I suppose it maybe if he felt like that was his connection to Essex, based on the way that Essex has been treated by the rest of the crew. Yeah, almost like that, like a connection, I suppose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I noticed some similarities there myself. I'm thinking of Isaiah's father being killed by other humans in their town because they were so afraid of his abilities and like what his abilities could bring to the town. And then, of course, Essex being killed by previous crew members of ships that he's been on. And I think maybe that's part of the reason they bonded so well. Um, but I would also argue that I think Essex, I'm not going to say deserves to be killed, but it's also like I can't fault people for wanting to protect themselves against someone who is obviously bringing them harm on their ship. Um, so, yeah. I'm curious, one of the most confusing parts of this story for me, why do you think it was so important for Isaiah to save everyone on board, especially since it doesn't seem as if he has many friends on board and he also is able to acknowledge most of them are not great people? Why was that so important to him, do you think?
Isaiah just kind of seemed to me like a big softy. Even though people were cruel to him, I feel like because people were cruel to him, he didn't want that cruelty to spread. So that's kind of how it felt like to me, is that he just wanted people to do the right thing and be good to each other, even though that is not what people were doing or have done to him. And it's almost like he just wanted all the cruelty to stop, and just be kind to each other. And so I think there's also a part of him that knows that if you just keep doing that cruelty thing and nobody stops it, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I think Isaiah also saw the humanity in other people and the fear in other people. And so that, I think that's why.
Yeah, I agree. I think he was just like a caring person, but also maybe he might have felt a bit guilty, or maybe that he brought all of this on because he did, you know, he was the main reason that Essex was brought on board, and if he didn't do that, then like none of this would have happened. So maybe he felt partially responsible for that and for like the lives of everybody else that was affected by that, I think.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the story, we're able to see that Isaiah is a pretty big empath, which works. But as the story carries on, I found myself so confused as to why he wants to save everyone so intently. Um, Everyone's like pretty mean to Isaiah, which I didn't really understand. Um, and yet he still wants to save them all. But I guess to be fair, he does consistently mention that he wants to save them because they have families, and he's thinking of them when he thinks of these different people being killed. But it also kind of seemed like towards the end, especially when he gets on the ship to like with the others to go catch the final whale, that if he allowed them to go towards the whale, they would have all been killed. And I found myself confused as to why he's willing to risk his own life to save people who like clearly don't like him. Even Alvarez, one of the guys who's on that ship with him, like threatens his life. I think like a chapter or two prior to that chapter. Yet he's still so willing to save everyone, which I found odd. But I would have kind of preferred if towards the end Isaiah kind of lets that idea go and decides to like go along with Essex's plan to let everyone die. But just my own personal thing. Okay, now let's discuss the book's ending. What did you all think of the book's ending?
I don't know. The ending felt kind of rushed, kind of weak. Uh, I mean, I knew it from the start. Like it was gonna be a doomed romance, no matter what. Like the second that Essex started killing people that cruelly, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't gonna work out. One of them is gonna die. This isn't gonna end well. Um, yeah, I don't know. It just came. It came kind of out of nowhere. Like okay, everything's going balls to the wall, batshit crazy. Um, the ship breaks. Isaiah makes it to the land. Um, that's it. There's, I mean, I don't know. I guess I could understand. Like, it's fine, I guess, but like, I don't know. There are some things that weren't explored. It felt kind of not complete, I guess, but like, I don't know. Yeah, I wanted more Isaiah. Isaiah. Yeah, I don't know. You've killed me, my love. Oh! Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wanted a little bit more romantic pull at the end, a little bit more, and I was like, oh, it's over. What? And felt like there could have just been more. Because lackluster's not a good way to put it, because it did have like it was pretty intense. I just felt like there was just so much more that when I was approaching the end of the book, I was like, there's only so many pages left. What's going on? And I felt like there was just like a few more pages. We might have been able to get somewhere a little bit more like cha-chow. I don't know if that's like more like those kinds of sound effects. Just kind of, it was so intense. Yeah, exactly. It was like so intense through the whole thing, and there was like this massive amount of buildup, and I would have wanted more like crazy doctor, or just some like things like that, I guess, and a little bit more explanation on a few things before wrapping it up. And like what's going to happen to Isaiah, because they're going to be in so much debt. Like what's going to happen, like what is going on, like fake death, pretending to be dead, and like what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. I feel like there could have been, it would have been nice to have some more explanation and some more wrapping up. Then as I've been sitting here and I was just flicking back through to remember what actually happens at the end, and then I guess it was almost every time I think back to Essex saying we've been set on this course, this is it. It's almost like everything, especially with the ship starting to literally crumble, all in the storeroom and all of that, and the things that were growing, and it almost, I mean, it was the foreshadowing showing that the ship was going back, well, it was going to become part of the sea and all of that, but it almost feels like, looking back, the ending wasn't that much of a surprise, and it was almost like a bit of an anticlimax, because we kind of knew that was happening in a sense, because Essex kept saying, this is what's going to happen, it's all going to shit, and then the ship literally and the crew literally, becoming these sea creatures, and I think it's almost like, well, what else can you give us, because that's what we were expecting, if that makes sense.
Michael, I know you didn't finish the book, but I'm curious, just based on what you did read, how did you think the story was going to end?
Not like you guys have described. I guess that I assumed that Essex would like take the ship down, and then somehow Isaiah would survive, and that would be the end of it. I don't know, but I do like the twist of turning everyone into sea creatures and stuff. I'll look forward to reading it for real.
Yeah, like I said from the beginning of the meeting, the ending to me felt so underwhelming. Unlike some of you guys, I don't know if I really cared about exploring the romantic element between Isaiah and Essex more. I think after a certain point, I just was hit with the realization that this is not a romance, like it seemed like the book's description sort of promised. So I kind of like let that go. But I was hoping when Isaiah and the others get to that like cave with the whale drawings and the seashells, hard word to say, seashells on the floor, which I'm assuming is Essex's lair. I was hoping we're going to like truly discover who Essex is and like why he's doing all of this, what kind of creature is he, and we just kind of got none of that. And that just felt so, I don't know, I felt so like pissed off that like we spent so much time building up all this tension and all of this mystery around Essex and around the ship's fate and all of that, and then we just kind of do nothing with that. It seemed like such a pointless addition to this story to me. And then I was kind of hoping once Isaiah got back on the ship with the others and he had like his final face off with Essex, that we would have got like some long, like information dump from Essex about his evil plan, like what he does and all of that. And again, we got nothing, which just was so underwhelming. And then it also to me seemed as if Essex is so powerful and he can control sea creatures and blah 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 and turn people into different things, he's that easy to kill. That to me just seems so I don't know. I was kind of hoping for like a Little Mermaid kind of ending where she thinks that she kills Ursula, but then Ursula becomes this like gigantic figure. I was hoping for that. And again, we don't get that. And that's just so lame to me. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I would say that a good book can be destroyed by its ending, but this book kind of took me there. Okay. I see your hand is raised, Grace. Go ahead and share.
Yeah. I also forgot I had this in my notes. But yeah, I thought the lair, like I expected Essex to be in the lair to kind of show us that he could move around whenever he pleased and he just stayed in that cage to like mess with everybody. I also expected to see Essex rise above the waves after the crash and everything and like wave to Isaiah and then just go away and be like, what? Like something like that for sure. And the fact that like it didn't happen, I was also like very surprised. But yeah, I forgot I wrote down like my own alternate ending for creep factor in my notes. And yeah, I totally agree with you, Jonathan, for sure. And I was just like, come on, you want to be like Monster, right? Like a Michael Myers ending where all of a sudden you think he's gone, you look, and then he's like gone from beneath the window, right? And you're like, oh no, where did he go? That kind of thing.
Now that you bring up Michael Myers, Grace, I'm curious. I don't think this is going to be a sequel. Maybe it will be. I don't know. I don't see how that would work, but I'm curious, is Essex now done with Isaiah? Because we know that he obviously comes back to life. He can't truly be killed. So is like he gonna like come back and haunt him later on? Is Isaiah now meant to like stay away from the ocean forever, or else Essex can grab him and kill him? Like that would have been kind of cool to see. This like looming threat over Isaiah's head would have been a really good ending. But again, I don't know why, but the author chose not to do that. So whatever. Okay. That's all I have in my notes. Before we move on to our discussion for our next month's book, does anyone else have anything they want to share, or should I move on?
Okay, I'm just like, since we're going alternate endings or like sequels, maybe Isaiah doesn't stay away from the ocean. I mean, he probably will, let's be real. If he was anything sensible, he would stay away from the ocean. But like, Essex revives, Isaiah somehow finds himself in the ocean again. And then his crew is fine. But like, I don't know, let's say Essex can teleport. Essex finds him again, and then the subplot romance turns into the main plot one there. Yeah, yay.
Okay. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Um, well, for next month's book, I have two picks. I'm kind of torn between. One is a bit more serious, and the other is a fantasy. I will drop the link to both books' description in the chat. Give me just a second. Okay, there's the first one called I Will Greet the Sun Again, and I'll do the second one. Okay, second one is Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl. Go ahead and read the descriptions of both, and then let me know which one you guys would prefer. Oh, also, I should say for the second novel, Paul Takes the Form, just as a warning, I know we've read erotic fiction in this club before, but I know Melissa and Grace, you both were not here for that. Paul Takes the Form is very, very erotic. I will say I've read it before. I never finished it. No spoilers, but I read it before and it is filled with just raunchy sex, like page after page. So if that's not your thing, maybe don't vote for that book for next month's book.
I think I'm feeling I Will Greet the Sun Again more.
Does anyone else have any strong preferences, or should I just pick one of the two?
How long is either one? I'm looking and I don't. Is there a page number on Goodreads?
Yes, I Will Greet the Sun Again is 240, and Paul Takes the Form is 354. So like 100 pages longer.
Hmm. That helps. Thank you.
There are audiobooks for both that are pretty widely available. I know they're both on Spotify, so if anyone would rather go for an audiobook, that's an option. So yeah, if that helps anybody make a decision.
I think I'm also more drawn to I Will Greet the Sun Again, and partly because it's shorter as well. But I'm happy with the other one.
I'm fine with either. I'm going to end up reading both of them anyway because I like the way they both sound.
Yep, I'm fine with I Will Greet the Sun Again. That sounds good to me. They both sound equally interesting, and so I can't choose. Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl sounds more like fun and like woohoo, but it's also 100 pages longer. So, and I'm also, I always read like 2 or 3 books at a time. So guilty. So I think I Will Greet the Sun Again. Sounds good.
Okay, sounds pretty unanimous. I will choose, I'll assign I Will Greet the Sun Again for April's pick. I guess to be fair, that's the book I really wanted. Like I said, I've tried to read Paul Takes the Form before. I really couldn't finish it. No spoilers, but I do think that based on what I've read, it does spark interesting conversation, which is why I kind of wanted to have us read it, but that's okay. Every book that we don't pick, we eventually read at some point, so we'll circle back to that book eventually. Um, okay, so I'll assign that. I was thinking, as always, last Sunday of the month, which would be April 27th. Thumbs up if that works, or if anyone has any objection to that, let me know. Okay, and I was thinking same time, noon for me, whatever time it is for you guys. Does that work? I can move it earlier, move it later, up to you guys.
I'm fine with the time, but I also know that we have people in very, very, very different time zones. So I'm willing to be flexible if needed.
Okie dokie. Okay. I know I mentioned at the end of last month's meeting that for those of you who weren't here, Melissa and Grace, Skype is shutting down in the month of May. So we're going to have to transition off of here and onto a different platform. I was planning to have us meet today on Microsoft Teams, but for some reason, I've been locked out and I can't get back in. And I couldn't get a hold of anyone from support before today's meeting times. So that didn't work. Um, I might try again and see if I'm able to make that work. I'm also entertaining the idea of moving us over to just meeting on Discord. I know that that's, or at least I believe that that platform is free. Well, Microsoft Teams obviously does cost. So that'd be nice. My only qualm with that is I do not believe everyone in our book club is on Discord. I kind of pose Discord as like an additional fun thing, not a necessary thing. So that would mean that those of us who are not on there wouldn't be able to join. So I'm going to have to figure that out. Um, yeah, I've considered Google Meets too. My only issue with both Google Meets and with Zoom is that the free version of Zoom, you only get to meet for 40 minutes and then it cuts you off. And then Google Meets is also only an hour and then it cuts you off. I just don't like that time restraint because we usually have meetings that go an hour and 45, an hour, 2 hours, whatever. And I don't like the idea of having to like rush people to share, especially as our club grows. I think it'll be more difficult to let everyone speak while also knowing we have like half the time as usual. But I don't know. I'm considering paying for either one, um, but I don't know. We shall see. I have a month to decide, but we'll probably try out Discord and then see how that works because that seems like pretty easy and free. Um, and the folks who do come on a pretty regular basis do have Discord. So anyway, okay, just for transparency, know that next month we shouldn't be here. We'll probably be on a different platform. So, okay. Before I go, any questions, comments, concerns about moving platforms, about the club, the next month's book, anything before we go?
No, I just thank you guys. Every meeting, I appreciate hearing what everyone has to say and like that everyone puts the time in to like come and discuss. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed it. My first meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, y'all are great. So thank you. Always love it.
Yeah, it was nice seeing a new face in the book club meeting. Yeah, thanks to everyone. Yeah.
Nice. So happy to hear you've all been having so much fun. Me too. Okay. Well, that's it. Oh, and I guess Jess too. I have to think about them. I'll try and touch base with Jess as well to see if they can use Discord since I know they're on Discord. But anyway, okay. Until I see you all next month, take care of yourselves and hopefully enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See y'all too. Toodles.
Bye.